What's up, everybody? Welcome inside to League Unlock, and we are at the day before Halloween, and because of that, it's National Candy Corn Day, so for some reason, around the country and the continent, we want to celebrate one of the worst candies of all time, because nobody likes candy corn because it's absolutely disgusting. But we are the day before Halloween, which means we're only a few days away from the World Championship Grand Finals for 2018. Nobody was probably predicting Fnatic versus IG, but it's going to be a pretty hyped up match. It's probably the most interesting and most even matchup, at least going into the series, that we've had. Usually, there's a pretty heavy favorite in these finals. This one is pretty darn close, which means previewing it, predicting it is going to be very difficult, but that's exactly what we're going to do here today. And there's a lot of interesting tidbits and storylines to follow. Obviously, they're both from Group D. We've never seen the same group members that got out of the group stage actually meet in the finals. It's rare to see a 2-seed at all get all the way to the finals, so that's an interesting thing. These guys, both these organizations have been around since pre-LCS, Seasons 1 and Season 2, and for Invictus, they've never really won anything at all. But here at this event, they have been far and away the two most dominant teams across the board. I mean, just look first and second in all these huge categories when it comes to team fighting, Baron control, and obviously the early game for both these squads. They have thrived, and both coming off some easy peasy 3-0 sweeps in the semifinals. They both looked fantastic. There was maybe one game that was close, Game 3 for both of them. It looked like Cloud9 and G2. Maybe we're going to get something rolling, but man, Fnatic and IG turned those games around so quickly. In a matter of about 5 minutes, they completely shifted the gold lead and took over in their favor. But because these guys played in groups, by the way, Fnatic 12-2 coming into this finals. IG is 11-4, both pretty impressive records. Obviously, one of Fnatic's losses came to Invictus way back when in the group stage, and the first week of group stage seems like it was an eternity ago. Well, it was about 3 weeks ago. We're approaching a month since Worlds has started, so the tournament's been going on for a pretty darn long time. Obviously, this is the game where the early game was actually really good for Invictus. Ning was on the Xin Zhao and looked great. This was actually Soaz and Duke in this game, and Soaz, you remember this play, was one knockup away from maybe turning the tides and getting a win in the favor of Fnatic if he gets 2 kills on Rookie and Jackie Love there with the Scion. But we've only seen Soaz in 3 games. It's been the Shy and Bwipo in the knockout rounds. They played every single game for their respective teams, and they look pretty darn good up there. And then we go the second time these guys match. Of course, we had the crazy final day of group stage action for Fnatic where they went 4-0. The first game these guys matched up, the Shy actually was an absolute force to be reckoned with on the Fiora in that split push game against Urgot. Urgot's a pick we're not seeing as much anymore, usually because it's been permabanned, but the Shy looked good on that Fiora, but it wasn't good enough. The team fight for Fnatic comes away. They'd eventually force that teleport out of him into an unfavorable matchup, and then the tiebreaker is where Brox's Lee Sin just went absolutely bonkers in the early game, camping bottom lane, which is something we haven't seen out of Fnatic lately, although you have in the knockout rounds and the closing stages of the group stage. But Rookie was an absolute menace on the LeBlanc, but he felt like he had to do too much. He got caught out in one key team fight that kind of turned everything around. And for the third game in a row, Rookie destroyed Caps in that laning phase. But when it came to the late game team fights, the mid to late game skirmishes, Caps on the Akali, able to get back into this game, pick up some kills. And we know his team fighting has been otherworldly in 2018, and he really showcased that against IG. Fnatic go 4-0 on that group stage. So really, these teams have already played a best of 3 with Fnatic taking it 2-1. So the fact, and you remember how insane those final 2 games were that they played on the final day of group stage action. So very exciting that we'll be seeing an entire best of 5 with these squads, and I would be very surprised if it went 3-0 either way. I think we're going at least to 4 games. Would not be shocked at all if we go to 5. These guys, Invictus, have obviously changed quite a bit, and I'm sure learned quite a bit from those 2 losses to Fnatic in the group stage. And throughout every World Championship, you kind of see the meta shift in itself within one tournament, and that has definitely been the case here at 2018. There have been some staple picks that we've seen throughout, so let's take a look at what the biggest picks have been, and you probably can guess which have been there. Obviously, the highest presence so far. No champion has 100% pick ban, but Aatrox is pretty darn close there at 99%. Alistair, surprisingly enough, is also up there at 97. Urgot and Aatrox were both 100% pick ban for the first, I want to say, almost entirety of group stage, at least the first week of it. He's down to 95%. Irelia and Xayah both tied at 82%. Boy, the tournament really shifted. The first 3 or 4 days, it was all about Kai'Sa in the bottom lane, but then teams really started moving away from that and putting that emphasis, that priority pick on Xayah in the bottom lane, and she continues to be there in these knockout rounds, although a lot more teams are shifting towards the like of Sivir for that utility, and just when there's no tanks, that Ricochet absolutely shreds through lineups. And there's definitely a lot less tanks here in that knockout stage that we're seeing, because everyone wants to play carries in that top lane, and boy, has it made for some exciting fights back and forth. And then we've got the highest win rates out of all champions so far at Worlds, and we're looking at minimum 10 games played, because obviously guys like Heimerdinger are 2-0, so they have 100%. But Ornn, we haven't seen much of him, but he's 10-2, putting a disgusting 83% win rate. Akali, when she rarely actually gets through the banning phase, she's 8-3, which is pretty impressive. And boy, that Shroud is just a fun and interactive ability. LeBlanc sitting at a cool 71%, 12-5. I feel like that win percentage isn't even a testament to just how strong a champion she is. You look at the game that Rookie lost against Fnatic, and LeBlanc was absolutely terrifying in that matchup. So even though she's only 12-5, I think she's a bigger priority pick than those numbers demonstrate. Nocturne, someone we don't put up there with the likes of the Xin Zhao in the top picks. Even Gragas has been picked quite a bit, but Nocturne is still, you can utilize that ulti so many different ways to starve out vision and just take objectives. It's not just for picking someone off who's away from their team. We saw some really creative uses of it in the group stage to deny other global ults like the Galio. And then Sivir, you saw at the bottom, who has come on strong in the knockout stage, and definitely expect that to be a big pick going forward in Fnatic versus IG, because as we all know, Reckless absolutely loves playing Sivir in that bottom lane, and she's meta right now. The meta right now is pretty much a dream for Reckless, and really Fnatic and IG as a whole, as it's shifted to these flex picks, they have both thrived in it with their solo lanes. And coming up after the break, we're going to go lane by lane at the matchups and see who has an advantage in which spot in the grand finals. Hello everybody, and welcome back to League on Lock. And usually when you're leading up to the World Finals of the World Championship, the hype has kind of died down a little bit, because usually either the semifinals or the quarterfinals kind of have a marquee matchup, and there's usually a huge favorite and a big underdog coming into the finals, and the event lasts for so long, it's almost a month. The hype has definitely died down. But that's not the case here in 2018, because you have one of the most interesting and intriguing matchups that we've had in recent years, and mainly because there's no Korean team that's in the finals. The West had their best showing ever at Worlds, and you've got, on paper, Fnatic versus IG, which is actually a super even matchup. And then you add in the fact that they've already basically played a best of 3 earlier on in the tournament. There's a whole lot of storylines going forward, which makes for a very compelling finals matchup that I'm excited for. We're previewing the entire matchup. We're going to go lane by lane, top to bottom, to see who has the advantage in each matchup. And both these squads love their solo laners, so we're starting in that top lane. Both guys have their subs that they brought to the event in Duke and Soaz, but throughout all the knockout rounds, it has been Bwipo and the Shy running it in the top lane, and they both looked absolutely fantastic in the semifinals and were the key cogs to victory for their squad. They demolished the likes of Licorice and Wonder, and for the Shy, I mean, this is the hype that has surrounded him for a while, and we're finally seeing what he's capable of. This is what people were dreaming of Khan doing at 2017 Worlds, but the Shy is actually doing it, and Bwipo, what can be said about this guy's rookie year? He's performing on the international stage, and now the final boss for him is probably the best top laner on the planet right now. So he's definitely going to have his work cut out for him. One of the interesting picks to look at in this top lane is, of course, that Victor. The Shy hasn't played it. Bwipo has played it a bunch, and he played it immaculately against Cloud9. Obviously, he's very familiar with that champion because he played it in the bot lane for Fnatic in the summer split when he was in for Reckless. I don't know if the Shy can play it, if he wants to play it. Maybe IG just bans it every single game, but I would love to see a counter pick to that original counter pick. Obviously, the Echo didn't work for Licorice, but I think that's just because he was not comfortable on the champion. Maybe the Shy even brings out a Fiora against it, or what I'm dreaming of seeing is his Riven. If you haven't seen some of the Shy's Riven montages on YouTube, check them out. He is one of the best Riven players on the planet, and that's something with enough mobility that can actually get to Victor and shut him down, but who knows, maybe IG just decides they don't want to deal with the Victor at all and ban it out. But I want to see some kind of counterpick from the Shy in that top lane because tanks are a thing of the past. We're going carries in that top lane. With that being said, I would not be surprised if we see Soaz come into this game. Maybe Fnatic goes down 2-1 or something and he comes in as the ultimate neutralizer against Soaz against the Shy, excuse me, because we've seen Soaz go against the best top laners on the planet throughout his career and at the very worst go even with them. So maybe Soaz shows up. Arguably the biggest matchup of this mismatch of this entire game series is in the jungle between Broxah and Ning. There's no argument that Broxah has been the best jungler at this entire tournament. In fact, he's been one of the best players at the entire tournament and maybe had one of the best Western performances of all time at Worlds 2018. Ning has looked suspect throughout this entire event. He was the first team All-Pro jungler out of the LPL, but he has been questionable at times throughout the World Championship here. Broxah obviously completely destroyed him in their last two matchups, but Ning has looked better in the knockout rounds. His Lee Sin looked a little bit better, but if you're IG looking at this matchup, I think you know that Broxah is going to have an advantage. But one thing you can take into account for is 9 of Broxah's 14 games here at Worlds have been on that Lee Sin or the Xin Zhao, so maybe you're looking at banning out Broxah, seeing what he can do. Obviously, that Elise pick did not work against EDG, so maybe you force him onto something else, but I still think Broxah has a pretty decent champion pool. His Rek'Sai looked pretty darn good, and Fnatic still feels like Elise is actually a decent pick. In the meta, it just didn't work out in that game, so maybe we'll see that again, but I would definitely be banning Broxah's Lee Sin and Xin Zhao, or taking the Lee Sin away, but Ning did not look that comfortable on it. But that said, big advantage in the jungle for Fnatic. Broxah has been playing at an otherworldly level. The mid lane features 2 MVPs from the summer split, and in all 3 matchups that they played in the group stage, Rookie got a counter pick and absolutely destroyed Caps in the laning phase, amassing 20, 30, 40 CS leads before 15 minutes. Obviously, the entire draft was based around Rookie getting a counter pick to the likes of Caps, and it didn't work in the last 2. Yeah, Caps was down in that laning phase, but we've seen his mechanics carry him in these team fights. He's a team fighting god. It doesn't matter what champion he's playing, and obviously he's got a very deep champion pool, does Caps. We saw that in the summer split. We continue to see that at Worlds. The LeBlanc pick in this series is the most interesting one to me because we've seen IG, they were first picking it against G2. The only problem is if you're doing that now against Fnatic is you immediately lose your flexibility in that draft phase because what you're seeing in all these pick and bans is something like the Aatrox, even the Victor now who can be flexed bottom, the ability to kind of shroud where you're actually sending these champions, which lane they're going, is such a huge advantage. And if you're picking that LeBlanc first or early on in the pick ban, then you immediately know, all right, that LeBlanc's going mid, you're not flexing that top lane, so then you're just waiting for that top lane, or you know that you can flex around depending on who the IG wants to get for the Shy in that top lane. You really just kind of lose that advantage that Fnatic could use by flexing a bunch of different champions. So we'll see if either team decides to ban LeBlanc, but either way, I think teams are willing to give up that flexibility to get such a power pick in that mid lane. I still think Lissandra's a pretty good counter to that. And even though everyone was upset that Jensen picked Lissandra 3 games in a row, he was actually holding his own and doing pretty well in that laning phase, amassing some CS leads against rookies LeBlanc. But across the map, C9 was not doing too well. But that's the pick to watch in the mid lane during the pick ban phase. Down to the bottom lane, where Reckless has had the best performance he's ever had at a world championship. And Jackie Love, in the group stage, him and Baolon were some serious question marks. They got completely destroyed by Fnatic in their last 2 games when they matched up. But in the knockout rounds, Jackie Love has looked like a totally different player. He's made those clutch plays, series clinching plays against KT to advance to the semis, and he looked very good against Hjarnan and G2's bottom lane. But I still think the edge goes to Reckless and Hylissang in that bottom lane. This is the perfect meta for Reckless. Xayah, Sivir, Tristana are all meta 80 carries that you can be picking, and I mean, those are some of his top 3 picks that he's had throughout his career. He loves Tristana, obviously, in summer and spring. He had that 80 KDA, so the meta is perfect for him, and really the overall play style where if it does get to late game, which most of these games are not, he's still kind of, because so many turrets are going down, he hyper speeds up to get to that 3-item power spike, and then he can take over these team fights, especially on someone like Sivir. Edge goes to Fnatic when it comes to 80 carries. And if we look at the supports, Hylissang is a guy who's almost been criminally underrated at this tournament. And matching up opposite Baolon, both these guys are kind of similar, where they have moments that leave you definitely scratching your head because they just get caught out. You remember the first game that these guys played, Hylissang was borderline inting on Rakan. He just walked into Jackie Love and fed him a kill. His engages were not exactly on the same page as his team, but that's really been the only blemish on Hylissang's entire Worlds tournament. Outside of that, he has looked fantastic. He hasn't even played Pyke. I want him to play Pyke in this finals matchup. That's something I've been waiting this entire tournament to see. The guy was an absolute beast in the summer split on that champion. I give the edge to Hylissang. I think his roams to the mid lane will get there before Baolon. And something real quick about that bottom lane, maybe, just maybe, Fnatic pulls an extra trick up their sleeve and decides Bwipo subs in the bottom lane. They bring out Reckless. Maybe they try it once. Maybe they've been saving the entire tournament. Victor bot. There's no better time to do it now. I wouldn't be surprised if they go down in the series that they try something insane like that because they're so close to winning a world championship. They're going to try all the stops. I think Fnatic gets this done in 5 games, but this is going to be one of the most exciting world finals of all time. And as I say that, it'll probably be a 3-0 sweep one way. But who knows? Gets going this weekend. And coming up after the break, we're going to look at the World Finals opening ceremony. What does Riot have planned? Do they have some big announcement? Because that's what everybody seems to think. This is League Unlocked. My name's Eric. Thank you guys for joining us. And ahead of the 2018 World Finals, yes, the actual best of 5 between Fnatic and IG is something to be hyped up about. But also, don't forget about the opening ceremony for the finals because we know Riot always goes big. The 2017 one last year at the Bird's Nest in China was absolutely insane. Riot did their little teaser for the performers. Obviously, it's all the guys who worked on Rise, the anthem, the theme for Worlds 2018. They'll all be there live, as well as some special guest performers from Korea. So I'm sure the actual performance and musical aspect of the event will be great. I expect them to go big, even though there's all the memes about Riot's budget here in 2018. But they do have a lot to compete with because they set the bar pretty darn high in 2017 with their augmented reality dragon that stormed onto the stage. And obviously, you know, the Bird's Nest is where the Olympics have been held. So I don't think it's going to quite match those levels of hype because those are basically unmatchable unless you redo that entire event again. But the other reason people are actually hyped is because they're hoping for some kind of announcement from Riot Games. There's kind of been some hints towards it, some minor leaks, some teases, and there's a lot of rumors. Obviously, the internet detectives are out there, and there's a lot of signs that are pointing towards some kind of reveal that Riot is going to showcase at this event. Obviously, they've been alluding towards a game for a very long time. People are talking about movies. I don't think there's any chance that it's a movie. If anything, it's going to be a game, or we'll all just kind of be disappointed and it'll be a champion reveal because it's been a very long time since they released a new champion. Kai'Sa was the last new champion to be out, and she's been a staple pick in the meta for a very long time. So maybe they just reveal a new champion. Maybe they do nothing. But I'm hoping it's something to do with their elusive second title for Riot Games, because all the content and all the lore that they've been updating, I mean, you go way back to the original, not the original, to the Annie cinematic that they did, I think that was over a year ago now. They had the Rise one here in 2018, and almost once a week, you're at least seeing an updated lore storyline on their website, on the League of Legends universe, the Runeterra universe. They've updated this map. They're clearly working towards something. There's no way they'd put that much effort into fleshing out the lore of all these different characters if they weren't expecting or weren't anticipating some big reveal. And you've even seen in interviews with Riot employees, whether it's them updating patches, all the vlogs that they do about the changes to ranked in 2019. They've gotten so many Twitter questions and questions from fans asking, is there any news on a new game? What's going on? You got to tell us. And they have definitely been playing coy about it and said, oh, I don't know, we've got something in the works. You've heard Mark Merrill talk about it before, that they think they have this new idea or genre, almost genre defining, genre changing idea for a game that they've been working on. And they basically, I'm sure Riot has all these top secret teams that they have to sign contracts that they're not allowed to discuss any of the work that they do, because if they are revealing some new title, some new game, you can bet your bottom dollar that they've been working on it for a very long time. I'm not talking years, like 5+ years, 10 years even. The game has almost been around, by the way, for 10 years. League of Legends, which is just absolutely insane to see the evolution and change that the game has gone through. And the opening ceremony would be the perfect opportunity for Riot to make some huge reveal ahead of their 10th anniversary season for the game. So it'd be exciting to see something like that. I'm just hoping that there's some game that you can discuss and we can get our hands on, because the lore and the entire storyline around Runeterra, I mean, playing a MOBA, you don't really scratch the surface of the deeper storylines that are connected between all these different characters and champions. I don't know how you would get 140+ champions into a game and immerse them all into it, because that just sounds absolutely exhausting for any team to work on. But maybe somehow Riot has found a way to make it work. But I hope they do some kind of announcement here before the end of Worlds, because that's what the people want. That's all the time today for League Unlocked. My name's Eric. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.